It's the first time in 23 years that I'm not working on Black Friday. So Christine and I are going to fly down and spend the day in Key West. I'm expecting really good VFR conditions for our flight today. There's an air met for IFR to the north of us. The ceilings in Pompano should be about 2,500 broken at departure, and that shouldn't affect us at all. As we fly farther south, they'll clear up, and the weather's supposed to be great upon our return. I'm going to go knock out pre-flight while Christine sits in the car and enjoys the last few minutes of air conditioning.
Now this is what I'm talking about. I just walk up, get in, and we go. Better than going for.
Clear! The ATIS information said we'd be taking off on runway 24, which would take us out southwest initially. But as we were holding short getting ready to taxi, they indicated they were turning the airport around. The wind had shifted, and we'd now be taking off on runway 15. That's perfect for us. All right, we're clear for takeoff. Taking off on runway 15, we're going to fly to the southeast, climb up to about 1,000 feet, turn south, contact Miami approach, and pick up our VFR flight following. In a few miles, we'll have to descend down to 500 feet. That's because we're going to be flying through Fort Lauderdale International Airport, and we've got to stay below the path of the departing aircraft. These broken clouds are at 2,500 feet, and they won't affect us at all. As we initially fly south, we'll be well below them, and then as we get south of Miami, the sky's expected to clear. We're going to go ahead and descend down to 500 feet. That'll keep us below the departures out of Fort Lauderdale International, gives a great view of Fort Lauderdale Beach, downtown Fort Lauderdale, and Port Everglades right off of our right wing. Fort Lauderdale is the 10th largest city in Florida. It's also known as the Venice of the Americas and the yachting capital of the world. It has over 165 miles of inland waterways, over 50,000 registered yachts, and 100 marinas. It's the place to be if you're into boating. On the right, you can see Port Everglades. Once known as Florida's deepest harbor, it's a busy cargo port. It's also the third busiest cruise terminal in the world, serving over 4 million passengers a year. Now that we're south of Fort Lauderdale, we can climb up to 1,000 feet, which will give us a little altitude and still keep us below Miami's Class Bravo airspace. We'll pass through the cities of Hollywood, Hollandale, and Aventura as we approach Miami. Next up is the community Miami Beach, a barrier island city connected to the mainland by a series of bridges and causeways. Development of Miami Beach began in the early 1900s when John Collins and Carl Fisher saw the potential to develop the area as a resort community. The population exploded in the 1940s and 50s, attracting many notable residents, among them gangster Meyer Lansky, who ran his casinos in Las Vegas and Havana from here. Today, the city's known for trendy shopping, the arts, and world-class nightlife on South Beach. Right up our right wing, you can see the Miami skyline and Port Miami. Port Miami is one of the largest container ports in the U.S., and because it's so close to Latin America, it's called the Gateway of the Americas. It's also the largest cruise terminal in the world and home to several of the major cruise lines. Just south of Miami is the Barrier Island of Key Biscayne, notable because while he was in office, President Richard Nixon built his winter White House here. As we turn west, we're going to overfly Stiltsville, a historic community of raised wooden homes built on a sandbar at the southern end of Biscayne Bay. At this point, the floor of the Class Bravo airspace increases, so we can begin a climb to 2,000 and gain a little bit of altitude as we cross the bay. Continuing south, we'll contact the military controllers at Homestead Approach and get permission to transition through Homestead Airforce Base. Looking out to our right, you can see the Air Force Base along with the Homestead Motor Speedway. And just like that, we are officially entering the Conch Republic. That's Card Sound Road ahead of us. We'll follow that across Card Sound, turn south along Key Largo, pick up the Overseas Highway, and follow that all the way down to Key West.
So beautiful. It is.
At this point, we'll have to climb to 3,000 feet so we can maintain radio contact with Miami approach and keep our flight following. Key Largo is the northernmost and largest of the Florida Keys. It's considered the dive capital of the world, home to John Pennekamp State Park, and also home to the world's largest artificial reef.
I kind of want to come here and go snorkeling.
The Overseas Highway is a 113-mile stretch of US 1 that ends in Key West. It follows the path of the old Overseas Railroad, which was an extension of the Florida East Coast Railroad. The historic 1935 hurricane destroyed much of the Upper Keys along with the railway, and after the storm, the tracts were sold back to the state, who used the land to build the highway. The Keys are also known for a unique collection of wildlife, from American alligators, American crocodiles, and key deer. In fact, it's the only area in the world where alligators and crocodiles share a habitat. Up next is Marathon, a 13-island community known as the midpoint of the Keys. The name Marathon dates back to the railroad days when workers complained that the project was, quote, a real marathon. Eventually, that became the name of the train station there, and eventually, the name of the community.
7-mile bridge. Yeah.
Just west of Marathon is the famous 7-mile bridge, which connects Knights Key and Marathon with Little Duck Key in the lower Keys. There's actually 2 bridges, an old bridge which was built on the railroad platform and no longer goes all the way through, and a new bridge built in 1982, which is part of the highway. As we flew west, Miami Approach canceled our flight following, but I stayed on frequency just to see what was going on around us.
40 X-ray, jumpers on deck.
What are you looking for? Jumpers.
40 X-ray, jumpers away.
While it's important to monitor approach, it's also good practice to monitor the guard frequency of 121.5 on your COM2 radio.
Hello, can you hear me? I can hear myself now.
I hear myself thinking, but I cannot hear you.
I'm pretty sure he's not married to an Irish woman.
A really good snorkeling or diving area. Looks like we got a redneck yacht club down there.
Now we're about 15 miles east of Key West, so I'm going to pick up the ATIS information and contact the tower. Key West Naval Air Station is closed for Thanksgiving, so I don't have to contact them and request a transition. That makes life just a tad bit easier.
Runway in, identifier lights are out of service. The pilot control lighting option for the runway 9 Pappies is out of service. Advise on this contact.
As expected, we were instructed to enter the pattern on a right downwind for runway 9. As we turned base, we were treated to an awesome view of Key West. This is by far one of the most scenic approaches I've ever flown. As we turned base to final, the tower told me the wind was now 130 at 11. That meant we'd have about a 7-knot crosswind from the right to contend with as we touched down.
Seaplane, babe. 25, you'll be driving that fat boy.
As I taxied off the active runway, I couldn't help but notice the Airbus A319 to my left. American, Delta, and JetBlue all operate the Airbus out of Key West. This is my first time ever sharing an airport with the big guys. For a smaller airport, Key West is pretty busy, serving over 300,000 passengers per year. It's a very busy general aviation airport as well. No surprise, judging from all the traffic on the ramp at Signature, which was where we'll be tying down and getting fuel. We left 33 Echo hanging on the ramp with some new friends while we took an Uber into town to walk around and explore. Fresh seafood is a must here, and the grouper sandwich from Eaton Street Fish Market was out of this world. While I set out into the hot sun to do our pre-flight, Christine was relaxing with the jet set in the FBO lounge. Once she was on board, it's time to kick the tires, light the fires, and head for home.
Key West ground, Cherokee 8633 Echo, holding short at Bravo 6, ready to taxi.
We were cleared to taxi and hold short of runway 9. We were also instructed to complete our run-up at the end of the taxiway.
Key West Tower, Cherokee 8633 Echo, holding short of runway 9, ready to go.
8633 Echo, northeast departure approved. Runway 9, clear takeoff. Traffic here at 5 mile right base.
Runway 9, clear for takeoff. 3 Echo.
Key West has been at the top of my aviation bucket list for a long time, and Christine and I have been looking forward to this flight ever since I started flying. Some flights are about the destination, and others, like today, are all about the journey. Our flight home would prove to be every bit as spectacular as the flight south. It's a real blessing to be able to enjoy this flight together on a spectacular day like today.